Welcome back to Fantastic Fantasy Fabrications. I'm Mike, and today, let's make interior floors. One of the things that I really loved about doing this project is whether you're making clay or foam tiles, it's super simple, super easy, and you'll be getting fantastic results. Now, without further ado, let's be getting on with the build. As always, if you want to follow along with me at home, links to the project overview can be found in the description. To get started, let's cut out our bases, and for that I'm going to be using chipboard. Whether you're using clay or foam tiles, you're going to be needing to do this step. Here you're going to see me cut these out by hand, but quite honestly I'm just too lazy to do that on a large scale, and I like to use my Cricut whenever I've got a lot to cut. So if you're lazy like me, like what I do, or just want to contact talented crafters about your newest fabrication, then head on over to my Patreon. There you're going to have access to all my plans on Design Space, links to the Fantastic Factory Discord, and other perks reserved just for my super fans. After we have all the tile bases cut, the process for the clay tiles or the foam tiles are very different, so I'm going to be covering foam first. Mill out your foam tiles to the desired size. What's important here is that there's a uniform thickness, and for that I chose 3/16. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll over these with texture rollers, but I'm just going to be using these to create guidelines. Later I'm going to put in all the detail with my hot knife. But for now, let's go ahead and glue these down to the chipboard. You could use hot glue here, but I choose to use tacky glue because later I'm going to soak these with an oil wash, and I found that the mineral spirits that I use to cut my oil paints can ruin any bond with hot glue. I'm not really sure why, but I have had that inconvenience more than once. Now that the tacky glue is dry, I'll come back in with that hot knife. The reason I do this step is simply because I don't think that the roller leaves a very deep impression that shows on the foam that I can easily get where I live. I know that I consistently call this a hot knife, but technically it's a wood burning kit that you can get from Walmart. If you have any questions on the tools or anything that I'm using, all the information is provided in the document. In this next clip, you're gonna see some of the foam floor pop off. This honestly is not an issue. And go ahead and reattach that sucker with just some more tacky glue. After I'm done with the hot knife, I'm gonna use another texture roller, but you could always just hit that bad boy with the good old aluminum ball. Finally, I'm gonna pull some of the smaller bits out of the cracks and crevices with these miniature pliers. And we're done here and moving on to the wood floors. Adding this texture to the floors is gonna be even easier than it was with the stone. I'm gonna take this ruler and use it as a guide for the hot knife. While I texture the wood floors, if you've been enjoying this content so far, please consider hitting like, subscribe, leave a comment, let YouTube know that I don't blow. After all the detail is done, I'm going to use the time-honored tradition of the wire brush method to really exaggerate that wood grain. Next, I'm going to cover both of these guys in the good old Black Magic Craft formula. Of course, I'm going to use white instead. And just like that, clay tile assembly is up next. And in some ways, working with the clay was even easier than working with the foam, and in other ways, it was a whole lot harder. Mostly what I mean with that is the kneading. You see, I got this gray Super Sculpey online, and apparently they make this beige colored stuff that's a lot easier to knead, but that's not what I picked up. And so I proceeded to cut it up into bits and press the living hell out of it. I highly suggest that you either get that beige colored clay or you have a good solid surface that you can press your body weight against, because this stuff is going to give you a real workout. Now that the hard part of working with the clay is over with, I'm going to make it all uniform thickness. And for that step, you could use a rolling pin, but again, I wasn't joking when I said I was lazy, and so I'm going to use a pasta maker. One quick tip about using the pasta roller: if you're going to use it, it's really a lot simpler if you knead everything out to about the right thickness and then cut the edges smooth with a straight edge. Now take that texture roller one last time and apply it to the clay, and afterwards I'm going to take our chipboard tile and I'm going to hand pick my very favorite sections of the textured clay. And just like making sugar cookies, anything we don't use, we're gonna mix back up, flatten back out, roll it again, and make some more tiles. After we've made all of our tiles, it's time to go ahead and bake them. Baking the clay tiles happens at 275, and it says for 15 minutes for every 1/4 inch. But this is only gonna be an 1/8, and so we're going to do half the time and only make it 7.5 minutes. After baking your tiles, go ahead and glue them right to your chipboard chipboard bases. And you might notice here that I have a 6x6 tile. Honestly, my advice on the 6x6 tiles, they're not worth it. Just stick with 4x4. You can go ahead and put them together like I did on this, but the results, honestly, not fantastic. There is one last step before we can start painting, and that's to shave the tiles smooth with the edge of the chipboard. Be safe and be better than me. Have a plan for cleaning up afterwards. After cleaning up, we can move on to priming our clay tiles. For this, I'm gonna use a cheap primer on the stone, but I have this can of Xanderdust rattling around, and I decided on a shortcut and using it with the wood. Maybe before my next video, I'll head out to the Home Depot and I'll see if I can't find a good color match. If you already know of a good color match, leave it down below because I want to know. So before I get started painting, I thought I'd go over how I mix my oil washes with all of you. I know that Jeremy over at Black Magic Craft recently did a video on don't be afraid of oil washes. It's pretty good. I'll link it down below, but if you don't want to watch that, I'm going to summarize it real quick for you. I like to take this really cheap mineral spirits that you can find at Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, really doesn't matter. You can basically find it anywhere. It claims that it's odorless, and honestly that just proves that you can lie and still be a success. But I do suggest that you do this somewhere that's not the only living space in your house, so sorry for that, honey. Anyhow, you can go ahead and mix that with these oil paints. I pick up this Master's Touch brand at Hobby Lobby. You can find this brand for about 50% off. And so whenever it is, I like to go and stock up when I need to. At that price point, a tube like this, when you're using it for washes, is going to last you a long time. So honestly, I'm just gonna squeeze a little bit into each of these eyedropper bottles, and then I'm going to add a couple of actuators in the form of these stainless steel balls, and then I'm going to use the vortex mixer to give them a good spin. So I don't plan on covering all 4 paint schemes for these tiles in this video, but I would say that if you're interested in any one of the particular paint schemes, you can find all that information in the project overview listed in the order in which it was applied. I do want to, however, talk about a couple of the things that I do when I'm painting so that you'll understand the words that I chose to use in the project overview. As I mentioned in my last video where I'm making basic city walls, is that I like to mix the cheaper paints with window washer fluid that's made for your car. The really cheap blue stuff. Again, I'm not the one who came up with this method of mixing it with that cheap window washer fluid. We're gonna have to thank Barbatos Rex, and that guy truly is a god of testing out almost everything that you have with the airbrush. If you're curious about something with the airbrush, check out his channel. I'll list it below. So using this technique, I'm going to use my airbrush to do a bulk of the work for me. When I'm doing a base coat, I like to cut it 50-50 with the window washer fluid, and when I'm doing my glaze coats, I cut it in about 4-to-1-ish. After I'm done airbrushing, next step that I'll do is either I'll apply my dry brush or go straight to washes. After you got everything painted, it's time to apply a clear coat. And for this project, I chose to go with this cheap semi-gloss. I wanted my floors to be somewhat glossy. That way it would have a contrast with the walls, which I chose to make matte. If you think you like this look, let me know in the comments down below. And that's gonna be everything for this video, guys. I hope that you had as much fun watching this as I had making it. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and until next time, keep all your fantasy fantastic.